Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very live episode of the Joe Monroe Show. It is I, Joe Monroe, and today we are going to have a very special guest with us. Hopefully, he'll be here pretty soon. So we'll see. Give him just a few minutes here to pop up. He's having a little bit of technical issues, so we'll hang tight for just a moment. I hope everyone's doing okay today. Now, I do want to say before we get started, those of you who forgot your prizes in Ferguson for the live, excuse me, I am so sorry, for the live trivia nights next month in Ferguson. I'll get it there because I'm not going to be in Monticello tomorrow. I got some family stuff to take care of, so I won't be there. But it looks like I believe our guest is ready. See if he's waiting to pull up here. Yeah, I know, guys, I know. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce our guest. He is the current AIWF World Television Champion and also the current TCW All-American Champion and the longest reigning holder and only holder of the Flynn Hendrix Enterprise title. Ladies and gentlemen, I am talking about straight from Zion Mountain, Hollywood, Flynn Hendrix. Flynn.
Joe, son of Maryland, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I knew you would hear me. But let's get a couple more things on there that you forgot off my introduction because I'm oh so humble, but I've earned my accolades. You also forgot the longest reigning UCW Southern States champion. Let's not forget that. 27 years this company's been going, and I have held that title longer than anyone else. How dare you?
My bad.
How dare you?
My bad, sir. I am so sorry. But before we get into the show for tomorrow, I figured since, you love everyone to hear you, let's talk about you today. A little bit of Toby Keith there for us. So tell me.
I forgot a red solo cup. I'm sorry.
Well, I don't have a red solo cup. I have a Beetlejuice cup, but
Close
same
enough.
difference. Close enough. So let me go ahead and get you pulled up here. You are the star of the show today. Let's go ahead and get you added. Why is it not letting you add? I don't know. So let's go ahead and get you in a solo layout. So go ahead and tell us how you got your start in pro wrestling.
How much time we got? So
an hour.
So, funny story. This actually goes back. Man, it's so weird to say. I'm literally an old man in a young man's body sometimes, it seems like, but I was originally trained in 2007 in the summer right after I graduated high school. I started in a dingy, should have been condemned about 30 years ago hotel called the Stadium Inn in downtown Nashville. If you've ever passed through, you've seen it right off the interstate, right in like the shadow of Nissan Stadium. I was trained by a guy named Tony Falk. If you're familiar with Memphis wrestling, if you've ever heard The Rock, or you read Shawn Michaels' book, Stone Cold Steve Austin's book, like this guy has been around and done it all. And he and his son LT were my original trainers. Honestly, I was supposed to be trained by Coco Beware, WWE Hall of Famer, after I graduated college. That was our deal. But when Coco found out that I was that close to Tony and it was 15 minutes from my house, he said, I know Tony. I trust Tony. Go ahead and you'll be in good hands. And training with Tony 3 weeks in led me to training with Tracy Smothers, led me to train with another guy who's so underrated and does not get his due even to this day, a guy named AM Vision and his friend Anthony Cervantes, both out of Illinois. Then I also got to go on and do some training with Kid Cash, Dutch Mantel, Pat Tanaka, like so many of these guys that are just legends in this business. And it all really opened the door when a 140-pound kid walked into a dingy hotel in the bad side of town where the first thing you see is a wall sign that says prostitutes and drug dealers keep walking. So, it's literally the epitome of a starving artist lifestyle starting out. But I did that. And on weekends, like my first semester of college, going back and forth, I was coming back home instead of staying in Chattanooga on the weekends and living, living a college lifestyle. I was coming back to train. I was coming back to get ready for my first match. And, November of that year, I ended up having it, continued training on. But I mean, it's been a roller coaster ever since, to put it bluntly.
Yeah, you mentioned Tracy Smothers. Everyone I have interviewed so far, and that's just been JD Thunder and Rated X, they all have Tracy Smothers stories. And I feel like not only with Kentucky wrestling history, but with Tennessee wrestling history, as you said, Tracy is an underrated legend, one of the underrated legends in this business.
Absolutely.
And, what would you say is your favorite Tracy Smothers story for yourself that you have that you
Man,
could tell?
okay, so I was actually going to ask you if I could take some time to talk about Tracy.
Absolutely.
I was not fortunate enough to have the type of relationship with him that a guy like Chase Stevens or Chris Michaels or, some other people around this area may have had. But I can at least make the claim that I knew him, and that, every time I would see him, we would even go years apart without seeing each other. And he would see me every time. He go, "Hey, Darren, how you doing?" He would remember who I was. And he's the only guy that has ever made me break character when I'm out in front of a crowd, when the red light's on, so to speak. And I'll give you the backstory on that. It was actually up in Evansville, Indiana, for Johnny Richards, Master Rich, how some may know him. And he was in a battle with my trainer, LT Falk. LT and I believe, no, it was Johnny and I were on a team, and then LT and Tracy Smothers and LT's wife were on a team. They're doing a fight that led to a pull apart with us trying to go out there. And, I go out there first. Here comes somebody else, and I'm not really paying attention. I think Cliff Compton may have even been involved. I think he was on our team, if I remember correctly. But I look back, and Tracy Smothers is on LT's team. And the first thing I see, like, if you know Tracy or you've heard about Tracy, you always hear about Sandy's Pizza. And he came out wearing his Sandy's Pizza hat, basketball shorts, flip-flops, and a red Sandy's Pizza shirt. And he just starts yelling at LT, "For the love of Tony Falk, will you cut this shit out?" And I literally had to stop what I was doing. We made eye contact, and I turned around. Like, I had to bury my head because I had to fight laughter, because I've never heard "For the love of Tony Falk, cut this shit out." I'm sorry if I can't use the 4-letter words on here. I'll apologize now, but
no,
that's
everything's it's my show. You're more than welcome to it. It's a wrestling show. Let it fly.
And I'll say, I mean, I'm typically a jerk. Let's go ahead and say, to most people, I'm a jerk. I'm the villain of their stories. But just when it comes to Tracy Smothers, in a sense, I always said too that he was my wrestling granddad. And I'm not saying that in the respect that he's old, but I'm saying that in the respect that I always, like so many others, have called Chris Michaels my wrestling dad. I still hold that true to this day. He drank, oddly enough, when a show got canceled. We drank in my car with my wife the day after we got married, and we just pounded like a pack of Coors. Like, that's how close we were, and I will always cherish that. So Chris was my wrestling dad, and then Tracy was my wrestling granddad. I didn't get the chance to be as close to him as so many other people, but I did also get a chance to, have one of his final matches, even though they were kind of sporadic and spaced apart, before his cancer diagnosis. And again, that's something I never thought I was going to get, but it's just a memory that I will cherish to this day, because you look at wrestling now, you look at a guy that's probably the most talked about or controversial guy in the wrestling business at CM Punk. He still talks about how highly he respects Tracy Smothers. Jim Ross talks about how highly he respects Tracy Smothers. Bruce Pritchard, all these guys that are a who's who, talk about Tracy Smothers and have nothing but the utmost respect for him. And it's just a shame that, Tracy didn't get his run in the big time that he truly deserved. But it is nice to know that all these people still hold him in such a high regard.
Yeah, I'm going to start segments in my show. Let's just have a Tracy Smothers segment. That way you can just tell your Tracy Smothers stories. Because I would have loved to met the guy.
I will say too, if you can find the link, or actually I'm going to do it right now. This is my favorite Tracy Smothers memory that I was not involved in, but it's a dance off. Like Tracy was just this very entertaining guy. I'm going to post it in the chat. So hopefully anybody that's watching, can see it as well. But like, he's doing a show and like, he gets all the guys in the ring to start dancing. And then as the dance is done, I don't want to spoil it, but he just turns around and lays everybody out. Like he was a guy that could just turn on a dime and just make you love him or hate him. Like he was a master of his craft.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like with JD and Rated X, they were telling me like Tracy was one of those guys like you could absolutely learn from, and that he always wanted them to pass on the torch to the next generation afterwards. And both of those men have. Like for me personally, JD, I just met him in the locker room one day and just started chatting with him. And actually, I believe the subject was Tracy and Smoky Mountain that we got to have that little conversation there. And of course, Rated X is one that's trained me the past year. Unfortunately, I no longer am wrestling, but he taught me the correct way how to do stuff. And he said majority of that stuff was from Tracy.
Absolutely.
So yeah, 100%. I'm going to just start having the Tracy Smothers segment on my live interviews for now, because again, I wish I would have met the guy. I started the business a year after he passed. Unfortunately, I never got to meet him.
Right.
But I feel like I have just hearing your guys' stories, though. Just hearing what type of guy he was in the business and outside the business.
I just sent you that link. So if you want to share that, please feel free. I mean, it's, again, too, like, just hearing the guys that you mentioned, I've known JD for, gosh, since at least 2008. And, even at that point, he was tagging with Tracy, and he's always spoken of him in such high regard. And Tracy was the epitome of not just being a professional wrestler. And I know this next term I'm about to use is taboo, but I say it with the utmost respect because it's true. Tracy was an all-around sports entertainer because he wasn't just a one-dimensional professional wrestler. He had charisma. He had personality. He could go out and have the match of the night, and most of it was him dancing or him just flicking his chin at the crowd or just telling them, if I hear Tracy sucks one more time, I'm going to smack everybody in this building. And that's what those people would go home talking about. So, I mean, if you couldn't learn from Tracy, then you didn't need to be in the business. It's plain and simple.
Right. So other than Tracy and Tony Falk, who else would you say, and Chris Michaels, who else would you say would be someone kind of like your wrestling guru?
Man, okay. So I'm actually hoping to see this guy really soon. Kid Cash. I know he's not really doing as much now, but man, he was funny enough. As I was training, I skipped the first move-in day into my dorm because Kid Cash was booked on Tony Falk's show and he was his champion because I wanted to meet him. It was not only was it another Tennessee guy, but it was a guy who's relatively my height, definitely built a little bit better than me right now, but I'm still a work in progress. But I mean, like, dude, he was the epitome of just an all-around badass that size didn't matter. He was a legitimate pit bull. He was a walking pit bull. And you didn't think about his size because he literally had the balls to just knock the hell out of anybody. And I mean, I've seen him do it too. I know how bad this guy is, and I've trained with him. He's the only person that has ever made me throw up. And it's just like, dude, he's an absolute, I can't say enough good things about him. On top of that too, like there's other guys, Rob Conway, man, like back in 2012, he was the one that really helped me get in probably the best shape of my life at that point. And man, it meant the world to me because I grew up watching this guy. And thank you, Phenomenal Finds, because Arn Anderson, man, we'll get to Arn later, but just like he actually requested to work with me in Evansville. He requested from Johnny Richards, hey, I want to work with this guy. And funny enough, too, like the universe works in such mysterious ways. When I was looking to get into wrestling and MySpace was still a thing, Rob was the first guy after Johnny Gargano that I had as a friend on MySpace. And Rob is the guy that put me in touch with the gear maker to get my first few sets of gear done. And it was just like, serendipity at its finest. You know, you get to work with somebody like that. And then oddly enough, I'm the first person to ever beat Rob Conway in the city of Evansville. Nobody had pinned him. Nobody had beat him by a count out. Nobody had submitted him. And I beat him. Like that. The guy that worked with your heroes on TV requests to work with you. And then you get a moment like that, man. It's just, I don't know how to explain. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it right now because it's such good memories. But, you know, it's stuff like that I wish I would have taken more pictures and not been of the whole, you have to be a professional and not be a mark, so to speak, because you can be a professional and you can be a fan, but the memories will last a lifetime. And I wish, like, I've still got the event card, but I wish I had a picture of me and him in the ring, like locked up together or something like that. Just the memories there were phenomenal. And it was La Resistance.
Yeah, I was fixing to say that tag team was a lot of resistance with Rene Dupree. Sorry, I had to get the French accent down there. Or French Canadian, my bad.
You must do the French accent with just us. You must do it with the just us. Yes, I'm trained in that. So eat shit. Sorry.
No, you're good. So we know you work for Triple Crown, AIWF, and UCW. What's other promotions? You mentioned Evansville, Indiana. Maybe some people who just recently watched my History of Pro Wrestling may remember, you know, IWA Mid-South. I don't know if you wrestled there, but a lot of people...
I have.
Okay, so you have. So a lot of people recognize, you know, that's Indiana territory as IWA Mid-South territory. Which
actually, I didn't wrestle for them in Indiana, but it was part of the same family company. Back in 2012, they actually ran shows down just south of Birmingham, Alabama as well. I was on one of their iPay-per-views down there. It was like a 6-way ladder match. Just all around crazy show. But I mean, like I'd worked for them down there. Now, Ian Rotten, I think, is the one who's normally in charge of that, or was. But I don't know if he was associated with that, but I do know that it was IWA Mid-South, you know, down there too. Okay.
Yeah, because you mentioned Evansville, and that automatically popped in my mind. I was like, that's where Roland wrestled a lot too when he worked for Ian in IWA Mid-South. But other promotions that you worked for, can you name them all?
Absolutely. So I started out with USWO, and if you want to get technical about it, now I say this with all due respect to Damian Wayne, because the company was rebooted after the fact. But when I was trained, you know, Tony Falk and I had a big falling out. I was told I would never be anything but the bottom of the card. His company goes out of business in 2014. Who was his final champion? Me. I hate to use the term undeniable, but I made myself so valuable as a villain that I became his champion. And then unfortunately, real life happened in other circumstances and the promotion shut down. They tried to start back up recently and it did not go that well. Damian Wayne became their champion, but in my mind, I'm still the official final champion. And again, I'm up there with guys like Kid Cash, Jerry Lynn, Chase Stevens, Wolfie D, all these guys that are legends in the business. So, you know, that's where I got my start. Back in the era of the Bruce Tharp days of NWA, I worked for that. I worked for multiple promotions. I was the final NWA Mid-America X Division champion, and I actually unified that with the Tennessee Junior Heavyweight Championship. And by all accounts there, I was also the final one. Random iterations popped up where they used that championship for different promotions that were outside of NWA, but I was the final one there. I worked for New Focus Wrestling in Evansville, Indiana, and Strictly Insane in Illinois as well. Another big one that I worked for was Empire Wrestling Entertainment right outside of Chattanooga in the Georgia area. And man, that was probably some of the best times of my career, along with another company called Fusion Tradition Wrestling, where I mainstayed throughout college. And they also evolved into Tennessee All-Pro Wrestling that's still going today. And then, you know, I also did some stuff. I've done stuff with WWE. I did stuff during Halloween Horror Nights with Six Flags down in Atlanta back in that time, where they would do Halloween-themed wrestling. So I was a part of that. Got into the park for free. Got to get the VIP passes and skip people and ride the rides in my wrestling gear. And, you know, just it's been this wild, weird ride. And then, obviously, I've worked for UCW on and off for quite a while before Terry pulled me back to ultimately become the face of his company. But I mean, it just hit me the other day that my first, like Caverna Super Show that's coming up, my first one was in 2010 in a multi-man match that involved Terry England and Demolition Axe. It's I'm taking the long way around to answer this, but like this means so much to me that I don't even really stop and acknowledge it sometimes. But just like I've been around this long, and in some way, shape, or form, I've worked for Terry England, and then I've come back and worked for him again, and now here I am doing this, and working for Triple Crown Wrestling, and opened the door there, and led to this right here. But it's just like there's been so many to name. But those are some of the ones that have stood out at the top of the list for sure. Where I've made the most memories more than anything.
So you speak about Triple Crown, like basically kicking in the door there. They opened in 2021. I started with them in 2022. And me, I'm not afraid to talk to anybody for advice. One of the guys that was training, he came to me. He goes, "Why didn't you just talk to Flynn as if you knew him?" I was like, "Because I'm one of those guys that I don't care to go and talk to you if you're going to listen, and you're one of those guys that has always given me feedback, so I appreciate that." But like, I guess not only in ring, but I guess backstage, people are a little bit intimidated by you. Me personally, you're just like, I'm like, hey, he's a nerd like me. I mean, come on. We both love wrestling. I mean, for crying out loud, look behind you. You got Dragon Ball behind you.
Oh, dude, absolutely. I mean, you can see my multi-million-dollar voiceover booth right behind me too. I mean, like, I love all this stuff. I love performing. I love just having the chance to do it. And it's still, I appreciate you saying that too, because I don't want to pull too far behind the curtain, but if you approach me with respect, I will give it back to you until you give me a reason not to. If you want to learn and grow in this business and prove that you're not a leech like so many other people have been, then I will gladly do my part to help, because in my day and age, there were guys that were willing to help. And I feel so weird saying that because I'm only 34, about to be 35, and I'm one of the veterans in the locker room now. Like Stan Sierra has, I think, a couple years on me. Chris Michaels, Tony Corral, just going off, the list for the event tomorrow in Monticello. Like I'm one of the 4 longest tenured guys in there. And on top of that too, like I've probably had experiences that some of those guys haven't had. But, just like there wasn't a big willingness to help most of the time. But the guys that were willing to go out of their way and help or take me under their wing, like I've never forgotten that. Guys like Jeremy Flint or Shane Morton, absolute gems of human beings, whether you love them, whether you hate them, like they did that for me. And I love professional wrestling. I love sports entertainment. And by the way, all sports are sports entertainment, because if you watch it and you're entertained, it's sports entertainment. There you go. But, I love professional wrestling. I want to see the business continue to succeed. And ultimately, when I'm done, I want to make the business better for Terry England and Brandon Wilson, because they're going to have a locker room of talents that know what they're doing and carry on the mantle. Because like Vic the Bruiser retired, who's carrying the torch now? When Chris Michaels ends up retiring, who's carrying that torch? You have to pass it on. And if somebody's willing to learn and sit under the learning tree, take it by all means. And if you don't, get out of the business, because you don't belong here. I've seen so many guys come in the last 2 years that say they want it, that say they're passionate. They don't invest in themselves. They don't invest in their gear. And maybe that's what makes me intimidating, because I do invest in myself. I've had arguments with my wife about that. My wife is 2 days ago, we had an argument because I just bought new gear that I'm hoping to have by Caverna. But it's because I want to look the best. I want to have the full presentation. I am invested in what I've done for the last almost 17 years now. Like I've made sacrifices that some people may be, that just may consider stupid, but I've done it. And I'm not saying you have to do those same things, but you at least have to have some form of passion and dedication. Invest in gear, invest in training. If you're being offered a place to show up and train, show up and do it. Don't make excuses. I understand life happens, but when it happens month after month, you clearly don't want it. And maybe that's what makes me intimidating. But if you want it, I'm here.
Get it right. So I hate to cut you off. We do have a scoop here, exclusively for the Joe Monroe Show at UCW Super Show in Caverna. This is number 24. Number 24. Saturday, March 9th, 2024 at the Caverna High School Gym in Horse Cave, Kentucky. The Fatal 4-Way. I mentioned it in one of my shows. Actually, it was on one of my other lives. The current rate for top 4 contenders to crown the new UCW Ultimate Wrestling Champion is the headliner, Chris Michaels, which I mentioned earlier. He was the first one I mentioned. And Flynn, you're going to jump for joy. You are number 2. You have been mentioned.
Should have been number 1.
One
but
that I'm looking at, and I'm just like, you're probably going to hate this, but Brandon Wolf has been mentioned now. You two have a little history there. Just recently.
I'll give him his due. I'll give him his due.
Past year.
We'll come back to him.
And very surprise announcement, surprise, former WWE superstar James Ellsworth,
the human snapping turtle. And I'm not.
I want to let that sink in for a minute. The Fatal 4-Way match.
I've been waiting for this announcement. I've been waiting.
I know, but let that sink in for a little bit. Because, those are 3 contenders, top 3 contenders without a shadow of a doubt. I'm going to let you have the screen back here for solo layout. Let's get your thoughts on that just now, because that was just recently put in here for Ultimate Championship Wrestling. I have a feeling that was Mr. Terry England that did that. So, Terry, thank you for doing that. So, Flynn, your thoughts on what I just mentioned now.
The King himself. And let me put it this way. Brandon Wolf, very familiar with him. He was just starting when I was looking to make my exit a few years ago. He has developed into a fine athlete. And I can't say enough about his tenacity, his intensity. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm disappointed that he pulled a page out of my playbook at Caverna 23 and I fell for it. He wasn't the legal man and he pinned me anyway, but I'm planning to correct that when we get to Bergen, Kentucky next weekend on the 24th for Appalachian Mountain Wrestling. But let's not sell him short. He's a very capable competitor. Chris Michaels, dude, his repertoire, his resume, everything he's done, the people he's trained, Randy Orton, Dave Bautista, Shelton Benjamin, like the list goes on and on. He has had a hand in crafting future Hall of Famers and guys that we still watch on TV today. And then James Ellsworth. Any man with 2 hands has a fighting chance. He made a career out of looking like a human snapping turtle on live TV. And then we locked up at the Nashville Taco Festival last year. No, I'm sorry, it was 2 years ago at this point. But here's the thing about James. Talented as he may be, huge competitors that he's faced like a Braun Strowman, AJ Styles, John Moxley, Dean Ambrose, whatever you want to call him. 5 chair shots to the back and a super kick. It took him 6 moves to take me off my feet. So I don't take that lightly. And I also don't take that loss lightly because I realize that I've beaten 2 of these men for championships in the past. But I haven't beaten James Ellsworth. And that still sticks with me. I haven't justified the wrong that was done to me at Caverna 23 last year. I have not. But 2024 is a year of redemption because I'm also going to right the wrong of being number 2 when I've been the face of UCW and carried it for the last 2 years. Because who came back on night 1 and made himself the Ultimate Championship Wrestling Southern States Champion and started that 15-month reign? Who made history wrestling in Salina, Tennessee with the lights out in the middle of a citywide blackout?
That would be you, sir.
That would be me because the fans were so invested in Flynn Hendrix, wanting to see Flynn Hendrix get punched in the face that they held their cell phones up and had the lights going just to see if I was going to lose. Guess who still walked out of the building champion?
You did.
Let's talk. Yeah. So
until Brandon Wolf beat you in Caverna last year, I might have to add.
Yeah, that cheating semantics. Let's see if he can do that again this year because if he tries, I'm going to be ready for him. But I'm not going to sell his athletics short. He is a fine competitor. He is a fine competitor, but he's not the leader of the pack.
If I'm not mistaken, Flynn, there's no DQ, no disqualifications in a Fatal 4-Way match. So
That's good in my favor too. Let's not forget that. So if I want to grab a chair for old James Ellsworth, I can return the favor. I can do to him what I did to some untrained goof back in November when I ran the cancer out of the business. I can do that if I want to. I can smash his arm. I can smash his back. I can smash his leg. Now, I realize that can happen to me too, but I'm not afraid to pull the trigger first. Plain and simple.
agreed. So it looks like you got a little bit of beef with everybody in that match. So are you saying you're promising to hold a title number 4? I don't know where you're going to put it, but you're promising to hold title number 4 this year.
Let me put it this way. When I became the All-American Champion, I said that I was a champion you could believe in, a champion you could trust. When I became the World Television Champion, I said that I was the standard bearer of who was TV ready. When I held the Southern States Championship, I said that it was the most relevant championship in this area for the sport of professional wrestling, and I made that true. What I'm saying now is that you can put the Flynn Hendrix Enterprises Championship up there because I've made that relevant too, but I'm going to leave that home because I don't want any distractions when it comes to my goal. This has been my goal. This has been my albatross. This has been my white whale for the last 2 years. 2 years, to the point that I even put sponsorship money for my podcast in the form of a bounty on the last UCW Ultimate Champion, and nobody could deliver. And in the middle of all that, I only got one opportunity, and I was this close, and I never got it again. So this is not lost on me. I am training harder than I have before. I am ready to step up and do what I have been doing for the last 2 years, but make it official in the history books. I consider myself the face, the load bearer, the workhorse of Ultimate Championship Wrestling and Triple Crown Wrestling. I'm not even going to say this. This is not in character. This is real life. This is the real Flynn talking. I need the Ultimate Championship. This has been my goal for the last 2 years. You know, you can forget being on pay-per-view for SummerSlam. You can forget being on Raw with JBL and Baron Corbin. I loved having that happen. But this has been my goal for the last 2 years. And I will do every single damn thing in my power. I will put my own body on the line to make it happen. I will pull somebody out of the crowd in front of a swinging chair and make them take the shot first just so I can get what I want. And it's not even what I want. It's what I deserve.
And I want to add the last Ultimate Champion was Vic the Bruiser, who retired the title. And quite honestly, I never thought we would see the title back. I thought it was going to be, right off to the sunset with Vic, but apparently not. So, Flynn, you finally have your chance to, accomplish yet another goal.
But let me ask you this too. When Vic retired as champion, what champion remained the face of the company? What champion remained at the top of the pedestal? What championship was everybody chasing after? Matter of fact, Chris Michaels, what championship was he chasing after on Vic's retirement show?
The UCW Southern States Championship, which you held at that time.
Yep. Chris Michaels didn't win it, though. Brandon Wolf chased it for 15 months, and he had to get Chris Michaels to help him cheat to get it. So, again, I don't fault him for pulling a page out of my playbook, but I'm bringing everything I've got in my back pocket to this match because this will be the second time that I will main event Caverna. From a 10-man tag over 13 years ago to the pre-show in 2022 to main event last year to main event this year, I will bring every single bit of attention I can to this show. And I'll even have Scott Steiner. I will have him looking at that match, and he'll be able to speak straight. He'll be able to call me Big Papa Pump at that point because I'll have every championship on my arm and in my bag, getting a workout, carrying it out of the building. Everyone will be talking about the main event of 24 at the Caverna Super Show because of me.
Now, last year you did main event, and let's go ahead and let's talk about that match. Since we're talking about Caverna, your tag partner in that match. Unfortunately, he is no longer with us. Go ahead. Do you have some stories aside from, main eventing last year, or what's your thought process on looking back on that specific match itself? Because that was one hell of a match. I got to tell you, I was sitting
thank you.
ringside by it.
That means a lot. And to be completely honest, I was relieved when that match was over. There's been a lot of things, if anybody knows me personally, that went on in the year leading up to that. I carried a big chip on my shoulder because I felt slighted not becoming Ultimate Champion. I felt slighted because I felt like I put everything into what I was doing. Problems at home. 3 dogs died in the same year. One of them attacked my youngest son. And instead of, I ran away from real life and I put everything I did into professional wrestling. I tried to control the uncontrollables, things that were out of my control. I tried to control it all, and it drove me absolutely insane. That's the reason that I snapped in the bleachers when we were doing an interview with myself and Brandon Wolf last year. And if you were there, you heard it because everybody in the room stopped and looked. I carried that championship and that company on my back, despite my personal life falling apart. And I did it because I didn't know what else to do, because I wanted it so bad. And then when I got there, I unfortunately did not cross the finish line. I fell for a trick that I normally would not fall for. But I carried that championship for the longest consecutive reign in UCW's history. For over 15 months, I carried that championship. I broke records. If you look in the history books for the longest running continually active promotion in the state of Kentucky, my name made history with it. And I don't take that lightly. My name made history. My name was there with Brandon Wolf chasing after me for 15 months. Fans trying to fight me. The police being called in Salina. Everything that happened. And I still walked in there with my head held high, with one of the most talented professional wrestlers and sports entertainers as my partner. And I hadn't seen Francisco for years at that point. I didn't know what kind of mindset he was going to be coming in as, but I knew that I had somebody solid in my corner. I knew that somebody like a Luke Gallows or anybody like an MVP that's been somewhere that has worked with him knew how good he was, and he was damn good. But we still came up short. And I have to live with that every day. But I will say, when I got the news that I was not expecting that he passed away at only 48, I almost cried. I mean, I fought back tears because I didn't want to cry. And, I didn't want to wake up. I didn't want to wake my family up at that point. And it was not something that I was expecting. It was not something I expected to find out from Gabe Sapolsky on Instagram. But it hurt, because whether I saw him every day, whether he was my best friend, whether we were just acquaintances or peers, when you lose somebody that's a brother in arms, or as Roddy Piper would call it, a frat brother, it hurts. Whether you liked him or not, it hurts, because that's somebody whose family is now suffering because they're gone. Somebody who dedicated their life to the same thing that you're doing, chasing the same dream that gave to the business in their own way, and now they're not here anymore. Because Francisco was training, future talent down in Florida. He was giving back to the business in a big way, and now he's gone. But it doesn't sit lightly with me either that I got to tag with him in one of the proudest, moments, knowing I was going in to main event that show and knowing that he was my partner. That's not lost on me. But that match, that was my passion project. That was my escape from reality for all of 2022 into 2023. That was just everything I had to give. And I'm man enough to admit, whether you like me or not, I came up short.
That's especially, no offense, coming from you, people would not expect that for you to say something like that. So
I've done a lot of growing, maybe not physically, but I'm I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong sometimes.
Right. But knowing right now, you're currently holding probably two of the most prestigious titles on the independent scene, especially in the state of Kentucky with the TCW All-American Championship. How did that feel, especially with this feud with Dominic McVeigh that, just abruptly ended it after you ended his title reign? Would you like to talk about that for just a moment?
Well, I don't want to give his name any credit, but I did what I had to do. Because one, he had been constantly chasing me just like Brandon Wolf. He took some belt straps for Brandon Wolf. He got marked up just like Brandon did in Monticello about a year ago. And then he had the audacity to make himself a champion on my birthday at Lake Fest last year. I took that personally because that was my day. But what was everybody talking about? It wasn't my tag team match. It wasn't the fact that I survived a match with the Monster 7 and Brandon Wolf. It wasn't the fact that I was tagging with Kevin Sinclair. They were talking about Dominic McVeigh pulling off a miracle and pinning Tony Corral. The All-American dream. The underdog gets his chance, but not Flynn Hendrix. I took it personally. And he ducked me. He dodged me because I had already held 2 victories over him. He couldn't beat me. What does he do? He snuck one by on me. Granted, I think Brandon Wilson's turned his ways around now, but he played a part in it. Got the quickest loss I've ever had of my career. I left my youngest son's birthday party to come to that show and win his championship, and I lost. Good for him. But here's the thing that separated me and Dominic. He couldn't hold that momentum. He couldn't handle the pressure. He couldn't handle the pressure of being a star. I saw him trembling trying to run around the ring holding 2 championships. He couldn't do it. He couldn't dedicate himself. Matter of fact, he said he got hurt every time we stepped in the ring together. Is that a champion? No. That's a guy that wouldn't show up. That's a guy that wouldn't train when he had the opportunity. That's a guy that wouldn't even get in the gym. The only reason he had abs is because he looked like one of those UNICEF children off a Sally Struthers commercial on TV. He was not a champion. He was not a professional wrestler. He was somebody that should have been showing up to train, somebody that should have been dedicated, somebody that was skating by on luck and a little bit of athleticism alone. That was a cancer to the locker room. And I did what had to be done. I felt pity for him. His house burned down, and he still showed up to work. I gave him a little bit of respect for that. But he was diminishing the value of this championship. Say what you will about Tony Corral, but he put some prestige on the All-American Championship. Then it goes to Dominic. He was floundering. Then he has the audacity to come after my World Television Championship, the one that I made the most relevant in the pecking order of the AIWF. Say what you will, but it was more relevant than the World Heavyweight Championship. But he kept skirting by and skirting by. And then he almost got lucky. That last man standing match wasn't supposed to be for his championship, but I had them review the tape because when I pinned him with that German suplex the month before, the referee was out of position. My shoulder was up. I should have been awarded that championship then. So I held them. I held them hostage until they came out there and made that match official. They justified their injustice the month before. They corrected their problems. And now, this championship is where it belongs. It's with someone that you can trust. Someone that will make it great again, and someone that will make it better, and someone that will continue to make it better and elevate it bigger and higher and better than it's ever been before. Now, I know TCW is still a young company, but it's not going to get any bigger than where I take it. So I did what I had to do with Dominic. He couldn't handle the heat in the kitchen, so he got out. He got shown the door. He left with a boo-boo face. Life goes on. If he wants to come back, he can buy a ticket.
Okay, well, there's one word you can't say on this show, and that's Brandon T. Wilson. You can't say that on my show. I'm sorry. That's one word you are not allowed to say. It's a no-go. Anything else is fine. But
He's
let's
drunk
talk
with power
about,
now, and I love it.
yeah, well, I don't want to talk about it, but let's go ahead and we'll move on to tomorrow, which I'm not giving my reason why I'm not there, but you pretty much named it. But with tomorrow, I don't know if you know this, but Charles Colton won a match against Adrian Alexander in Ferguson, Kentucky. And that was a number one contender match for the AIWF World Television Championship. And I was able to do the interview, and the interview, he stated that tomorrow he is cashing in that check. So what is your thoughts on Charles Colton? Because, I mean, he's on fire right now. I don't know if you want to admit it or not. The man is on fire right now. The crowd loves him. He's one heck of a wrestler. But what is your thoughts on Charles Colton, especially going into tomorrow's match?
I saw the interview, and as of now, he's trying to call his shot. But his people haven't contacted my people. I haven't seen anything made official yet. So he can act like he's going to get that shot. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. But as of now, nothing has landed in my lap. But I have to ask, though. Charles, you and I have history going back as far as 2010. I beat you then. It's 2024 now. We're both older. Hopefully, like me, you're a little bit wiser. But I'm also the standard bearer for who's TV ready. So let's say the stars align. Let's say everything plays out and everything works out for Charles to get his championship shot. Let's say. Is he TV ready? Can he handle the pressure? Can he do what I've done for the last 9 months? That's the real question. Because like I said, I have made this the most relevant championship. I'm doing what guys before me, like Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Steve Austin, so many legends in this business have done with the World Television Championship. I have taken it and I have defended it against the best. Now, if Charles thinks he's the best, good on him. Confidence will carry you in this life. But sometimes confidence can come back and bite you in the ass because it ends up being nothing more than an ego that can't back up what it says. I've seen the momentum Charles has had lately. I've seen the matches he's had with Adrian lately. I've seen everything he's been doing. But just because he won that match and gets to call his shot, what makes him think he has the right to challenge for a World Television Championship shot? I mean, he could challenge for any championship. Why not get some more momentum? Why not build yourself up that way and then come up to the top of the mountain where the king sits, and then let me kick you right back down and humble you like life has done for the rest of, since we've been apart. Why not let that happen? I mean, again, it's becoming kids with egos. They think they're entitled. Just because he won the match doesn't mean it's official. But whenever he's ready, if he thinks he's ready, I'll be waiting. I'll be waiting because I took 16 years to get this. I'm not going to let it go that easy. Plain and simple.
Duly noted. Okay. Well, we still got about 10 minutes here. You mentioned earlier that you have your own podcast. So when did I know you've helped me with this show? Again, thank you for your help. And if I have any questions, I know who to reach out to. But when did you start that?
I actually started that in August of 2021. That was something that I'd kind of sat on and toiled on. And it's actually part of what serendipitously led me back to the business while I was pursuing acting to become more well-rounded as an entertainer. I realized that I have a lot of friends that are actors. I have a lot of friends that have their credits behind the microphone, but people don't know their faces. They don't know their names. They don't know their stories. They just know the characters of the commercials they voice. They've got stories. They've got struggles. Same as professional wrestlers. I mean, Chris Michaels, for example, he was my first guest when I finally pulled the trigger on this. Guy that should, by all rights, have had a contract at one of these major companies and never had it, but still kept plugging along and is still going to this day and still just carving his legacy in stone. What kept him motivated? What kept him going? Let's talk about these setbacks that might have made you an overnight success after 20 years. Let's talk about that, because I was struggling with things too, and I wanted to know how these people coped with it. And oddly enough, it took me walking through the annual podcast convention. I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but it was happening 5 minutes from my house at Opryland Hotel in Nashville. And lo and behold, I see guys that I listen to: Jeff Jarrett, Conrad Thompson, Tony Schiavone, Eric Bischoff. They're all there. And it made me realize I want to be on this stage talking about what I did. So, I mean, within the first day of just finally, crapping or getting off the pot, I came up with a list of people I knew, different coaches, different actors that I knew, friend of a friend type situation. And I just made a list. And within that first day, at least after reaching out to them, at least 30 people responded saying that they wanted to be a guest on the show. It's free publicity, if anything else. I mean, plain and simple. We got to market ourselves to get out there. Free publicity is never a bad thing. And, it was a great escape and a great outlet to, not only address like just different struggles that actors or performers or just even entrepreneurs. Like, I've talked to authors and entrepreneurs that struggled, that weren't sure they were making the right move, but they had confidence in themselves to continue the path. And they just talked about what they did, how they recharged their battery so they don't lose their passion and get bitter. And it brainstormed into that. And coincidentally enough, this catchphrase that I came up with in 2011, "I know you hear me," just randomly yelling it at somebody, became the name of the show because it covered all bases. It wasn't wrestling themed. It wasn't acting themed. It wasn't anything. It was just a broad spectrum. And you had my name attached to it. And it's taken on a life of its own. I mean, like, if you listen to my entrance music now, my friend Linda Young, who you mentioned Dragon Ball earlier, she was the voice of Frieza, one of my favorite characters. She's the one that I grew up on. And now she's doing the intro to my music because I was able to connect with her, meet her, and become friends with her. She's got an interview on my show. Corey Disson, the guy that helped me develop my brand as Flynn Hendrix, that helped me develop my website, theflynnhendrix.com. Go buy some merch. He helped me do all this, and just getting to talk to him, hearing about his story, about how he never gave up, how he just kept punching up until he finally got where he wanted to be. Like, that stuff is motivating. And then I got people like Bob Bergen. Like, people may know him as the voice of Porky Pig that replaced Mel Blanc all those years ago. I got guys like Jonathan Joss, the voice of John Redcorn on King of the Hill. Like, I got so many people that I never thought I would get just by shooting my shot and asking the question. Now, some I got left on red. Oh, well. But, and it's like, just, I shot my shot just to talk to these people. And the biggest thing was I didn't go in with a set agenda, and I learned it over time as I developed as an interviewer. And I just came at it like a conversation. I may have had one or two set questions, but the biggest thing was just wanting to talk to these people on a human level, because oftentimes I'm guilty of it still. We put people on pedestals, but at the end of the day, they put their pants on the same way that we do. They go through the same struggles we do in some way, shape, or form. And if you hear that somebody you look up to goes through that, then there's hope for you too. I mean, I have to say this because today is unfortunately the anniversary of one of my friends, Shane Smalls. For anybody that was blessed to know him, he's worked for Terry England and UCW in the past. Today is, unfortunately the anniversary of his passing. And it was actually about this time in, I think, 2017 that I got, the message that he had passed away. Left 2 kids behind and left his wife. And, if that podcast could keep somebody else from going down that path and just knowing that, there's hope, there's people that care about them, then, it was worth it, even if it's only for one person. And these are fake tears. It's not real. I love Shane Smalls, but you people will never see me cry. Shit. Anyway, but yeah, the whole point was just to show people that, there's hope out there, that these people are human, and if they can succeed at their goals and dreams, then you can too. And I know that's contradictory to a villain by all accounts of what these people would classify me as, but that was my goal, because I may do some questionable things to get what I want, but at the end of the day, I'm still trying to inspire people too. So there you go.
Well, Phenomenal Fonz just asked something. Well, do you mind talking about your experience with your latest movie with James Storm?
Absolutely. Lighter note, and this is actually something that has helped me get closer with James, because we actually didn't start off on the right foot for one reason or another. We met officially back in 2012, asked if he would watch a match at a show, and told me he couldn't because he had to get dressed, and, come to find out he was already dressed for a street fight. Just, I felt blown off. Then a few years ago, we worked a show, and I was already there and dressed, getting ready to work a match with Chris Michaels, and I had a red and blue singlet on, red with blue trim. Well, we get put in a 6-man match, and he got mad because I was already wearing, red gear, and he was wearing red trunks. And, it just, both of us kind of rubbed each other the wrong way. Maybe I could have had a different set of gear to change into, but I didn't think that far ahead. It was a last minute thing. I grabbed what I could and got on the road to beat traffic. Maybe rookie mistake 8 years in. So I didn't exactly know what to expect going into this when I asked. When I threw my name out there to do it, thanks to, Chad Flatt, that runs Music City Toys and Collectibles out in Watertown, Tennessee. He recommended me to Logan Sekulow for that. Now, when I went in, I didn't know how many people were attached to this. I may not agree with some of these people politically. That's neither here nor there. But I mean, when you've got names like Sean Hannity, Mike Huckabee, when you've got names like that attached to this movie that I didn't find out about till after the fact, like it's a huge, huge thing. Like, then of course, like Eric Bischoff, another voice actor that I know, James Arnold Taylor from Clone Wars and Star Wars, like they're involved with it. You find this out after the fact, but my goal that day was to show up and just do these scenes. I was told bring gear and, bring black clothes. So I did. It was me and 2 guys from Alabama. One guy was named Braden Toon. I don't remember the other guy's name, but ultimately what it was to film these fight scenes for the character James played in the movie, who was a TV superhero. And honestly, it was pretty cool because I got to have some input in the fight scenes, not just for me, but for the other people too. And it was kind of me and James brainstorming it. And it's actually led to he and I keeping up contact now. And now he's actually helping refer me to an acting school that he attends here in Nashville. And I mean, like, just getting to see the stills of the fight scenes after the fact, getting to see my name across the screen, even though they misspelled my last name in the credits, whatever. But, you see Flynn Hendrix in one of the fight scenes because I'm wearing my entrance vest for the fight. And I came up with the idea to have him do a Van Terminator with a book into my face, which was a callback to something I used to do earlier in my career, where I would hit people with books. Like we do that and we're doing our own stunts, and these guys are just sitting here like eating it up. And like that made me so proud to have that moment and to have that on my resume, because, like you tell your agent, you go out and get stuff on your own, and man, they love that stuff because, I mean, that's technically their job, but they're trying to get paid too, but you show that you want it basically. And it opened up some doors that I didn't think were possible. And it was all just by pure luck and being ready more than anything, because the harder you work, you're ready when that opportunity happens. And that's a proven case of that right there. And it gave me a reboot on my friendship with James, and I'm thankful for that.
All right. Hollywood Flynn Hendrix, thank you so much for coming on the show. I gotta get you on again because an hour is, like you said to me earlier, is not enough.
I'm a bit long-winded and I've got a lot of stories to tell. So anytime.
So, what, we'll definitely get you back on the show. If you ever want me on your show, I guess I'll come on your show since you were nice here. Any favors you want now, you did me this favor. I guess I owe you. I'm kidding.
I'm going to call in one of those favors right now. And ladies and gentlemen, I know that we're at the hour mark, but I have to say this right now. If you're a fan of professional wrestling in the Southern Kentucky area, in the Middle Tennessee area, make the drive to one of these UCW or TCW shows. We're literally in the biggest portion of our year. It's WrestleMania season for WWE, and it's the same for us. These Caverna Super shows, I personally classify them as the WrestleMania of this area. You see all these shows pop up here and there that never come back. This one has been going on for 24 years. UCW has been around for 27 consecutive years nonstop. And that's during COVID. And that just shows the tenure, the experience, and the quality of performance that you're going to get from these shows. So bring your family to these shows. Bring your friends. I'm a villain. By all means, I am a villain because my vision is different. But these are some of the biggest shows that you will see and some of the best shows that you will see. And, who knows? Somebody that you see on one of these shows, maybe somebody you see on TV next year. You never know. But by all means, go to Facebook, get the UCW page, get the TCW page, follow them both, get tickets to Caverna, get tickets to Monticello, get tickets to Ferguson. You won't be disappointed because it's an all-around great show for family, and bring your friends. Keep the shows growing because this is how it gets better. This is how the shows keep growing, and we get to keep coming back and entertaining you every month.
Exactly. And as I always say, support pro wrestling no matter where you're at. Even if you're in Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, New York, New Jersey. If you're in New Jersey, I'm sorry. But if you're in the area and there's some local pro wrestling going on, I don't like using the term independent wrestling because everything is pro wrestling to me. So that's just me.
Phenomenal Finds hits a good point too. Bring your wallet. If your favorite wrestler has merch, by all means, stop at that table, support them, get a shirt, do anything. Again, I'm a bad guy, but 10% of every sale I make goes to St. Jude, and the other 10% goes to the Nashville Humane Society. I'm a bad guy, but I've got charities I care about. I care about the kids and I care about the pets. So get some stuff.
I need a shirt.
Yep. I got you covered. I even got a Stone Cold and Rock poster with your name on it that's an exclusive. But
thank you.
10% of that sale is going to St. Jude. Actually, it's 20% of the sales total, but it goes to charity. It helps me support living my dream. It helps me pay my bills on top of everything else. But it shows support all around. And if you just come up and say, hey, we enjoyed your match, or we appreciate what you do, that's plenty right there too. So just show up and support, because that's what these independent shows need. You love WWE, go see the people in your town too. It's simple as that.
Not only with wrestlers, I'm starting to get some merch out, a little hint that's supposed to be a surprise for Caverna I'm setting up, but there may be some shirts coming out soon. If I can get them in time, there could possibly be some Joe Monroe shirts.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, yeah. Possibly if I can get them in time, those will eventually come out. And, referee Dustin here, love your refs merch as well. Get that. Dustin's one of the most hardworking ones there. Not only that, there's plenty of referees that travel just as much as wrestlers do. I have experienced that. Heck, I'm a wrestler. I even had to ref a death match one time. That's an experience. That's an experience for another time. But as for now, I want to thank our sponsor, Phenomenal Finds ATL, for one, popping up, and for two, for helping sponsoring the Joe Monroe Show. Thank you again, Hollywood Flynn Hendrix, for taking the time, for showing up today and letting us do this interview. Again, we got to get you back on the show. Thank you, UCW and TCW, for allowing us to be your partners in doing this. And as always, folks, I always leave off with a good night. Stay safe. And as always, support pro wrestling in general. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and you have a great night.